Hi there. Well, I hope you are all still alive. And first of all, a question. There have been tens of thousands of academic studies on leadership and entrepreneurship, and they disagree about almost everything, but they all agree on just one thing, which is the vital characteristic of successful entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and leaders. And what is it? No. Sorry? Bravery? Not even that. Resilience, sort of, yeah. Sorry? No. You can be a good leader and not very innovative, sadly. No, the one thing they all agree on is persistence. The ability to still be here. So you're doing very well. And the ability to cope with setbacks, with defeats, with difficulties. And as my former mentor, Michael Young, who was a social entrepreneur in Britain, said, always taking no as a question, not an answer. So when you have a great idea and someone says, nope, you say, that's an interesting question. How do I make it better? Not, no, oh God, how terrible. I must stop. So I thought I would just offer a few questions. So first of all, in the light of all that you've been thinking and saying, what are your answers to these questions? What can I do? What can my organization do? And what can the system do? And I think all of us are always having to ask all three of these questions. They're slightly different. There is the personal question of how you are every day, how open you are to ideas, how brave you are, maybe, to take a risk and do something which is quite challenging for your career. And I think there's a personal question of how you treat the people around you. When they have an idea, do you always say no? Or do you see even the half-formed or bad ideas as maybe one step towards a good idea? And I know for myself, I'm very good at saying why ideas won't work, but I'm often wrong. So I have to stop myself from doing that. Otherwise, I will kill the beginnings of good ideas. So there's a personal question which I think we'll come to a little bit in the next session. There's a question of what can an organization do to promote innovation? And usually there are some quite simple questions you can ask, like how much of the time of the organization or its managers or its leaders is being devoted to the future, to services which may not come in for 2 years or 5 years. How much of the budget is focused on 5 years' time, not today? How much does the board discuss innovation and the future, or how much is it only discussing the present? And most organizations in civil society, and to a degree in government, are much more focused on the past and the present than the future. Most public agencies and departments couldn't tell you how much they spend on the future or on innovation. They have no numbers, and their boards do not hold them to account. I'm going to focus a bit on the third question of what can the system do to make it easier for innovations to flourish. And I'm going to first of all show you a completely incomprehensible picture. This is the answer. It probably would do quite well as an eyesight test if I was an optician. I won't go through it, but it may be we might circulate copies of it because it's an attempt to summarize, and you literally can't read it, apologies, each of the stages of innovation, from understanding a problem through generating ideas, developing them, implementing them, and scaling them. This is the spiral you've seen, but we've tried to break down what skills are needed at each stage. How should you handle risk at each stage? Some stages you can have a big appetite for risk, others a low appetite. What money is needed? What kinds of money do you need at each stage? What kinds of evidence do you need at each stage? And this is not the final answer, but it's an attempt at putting on one page some of the choices, particularly for organizations, about how you manage innovation at every stage, from the very, very early, very speculative, very imaginative, right through to large-scale implementation, delivery, and systems. I'm going to talk about 3 systems things, which are all current examples in the UK, but maybe prompts for what could be done here in Hong Kong or Seoul or somewhere else. Because they're all attempts to see how do you reorganize government to make innovation easier. So, the first of these is a fund. It's called the Innovation in Giving Fund. And this is money provided by the national government in Britain to my organisation, STENTA, about £10 million, so let's say 100 million Hong Kong dollars, 120 million, for people to apply who have innovations in giving money, in giving time, or in sharing resources, sharing food or buildings or cars. And this is very unusual for government. It's first of all very unusual to think that innovation in giving matters. Governments are used to funding innovation in computers or in aeroplanes or in electric lights, but not in giving. And it's also perhaps unusual because it's open. Anyone can apply. And everyone who did apply had to put a video of their idea on the website. So you can see all the ideas through 2-minute videos, sometimes 3 minutes. And so far, we're backing about 30 projects. And again, if you look at our website, you can see all of these with short descriptions and videos on everything from new kinds of mentoring to new kinds of elder care, time bank, new ways of giving money linked to children's birthday parties, and so on. So this is an example, I think, of a government using its power and its money to encourage a kind of civic innovation which has always happened, but has usually not been backed by government. And I should say, in the second round of this, there is money for scaling. So the first round was money for early stage ideas to test themselves and prove themselves. Second stage, larger sums to take these to a larger scale. The second example is prizes. We, 1 month ago, launched a new centre for challenge prizes. And this is another way I think government can help innovation. There are quite a few examples. So 3 or 4 years ago, Nesta ran a thing called the Big Green Challenge, which was a prize of £1 million for communities which could demonstrate they were cutting carbon in the community by a large amount, 80% or more. In business, there are some very famous ones like the X Prize for space travel or getting someone onto the moon. There is a web platform called Innocentive, which offers prizes for people who come up with technological solutions, usually $20,000, $30,000. And we're trying to now apply this prizes method to social innovation and civic issues. Next month, we will launch one of the prizes, which will be for ways of helping older people be less isolated. So it'll be a prize for good innovations which mobilize the community to support older people who are alone and have no one to talk to. Another prize will be for waste, for community-led methods of reducing tons of waste in, for example, food or paper, or it may be wasted land or wasted buildings. And again, we will open it up to anyone to have an idea. And there will also be one for mobility, a prize for mobilizing volunteer transport for the disabled or the elderly. Now, the point about prizes is the sums of money are quite small. Maybe 200,000 Hong Kong dollars, maybe 500,000. But the idea is you mobilize lots of minds, lots of creativity, and you only pay the money if someone can show they can actually achieve the objective which the prize is for. And the third example is about money. You need money to innovate. And that is why in most developed economies, 2, 3, 4% of GDP is spent on research and development. Because you cannot have new ideas, new technologies, new services without money, without investment. Silicon Valley has only succeeded because of the biggest investment in technology by a government ever made in human history. Vast sums from the Pentagon led to the computer, the fiber optic cable, the microprocessor, and so on. So the big battle, I think, or one of them of the next few years, is how do we get money for social innovation? How do we get budgets in governments and new kinds of money? These are a few examples, but I only want to mention one of them, which is this one. Big society capital. There's a new bank in the UK with £600 million, so 7 billion Hong Kong dollars, but not one penny has come from the taxpayer. All the money has come from unclaimed bank accounts. That is to say, the bank accounts people forget about, or they die, or they leave the country. And in every country, there are large sums of money lying dormant in these bank accounts. And we persuaded the government to create a new fund for taking social innovations, social enterprises, social ventures to scale. And our problem is we now have too much money. I'm on the board of this organization. We need better applications to come through. I have a board meeting tomorrow afternoon on the phone from here. But the key point is, alongside what you do in your personal life, your personal response to innovation, alongside what you do within your organization, all of us need to campaign to create the conditions for innovation, conditions which will include new kinds of money. There's lots more to be said about those conditions, but I think that's probably enough for now. And I would urge you, seek out the unused money, the dormant, sleeping money of Hong Kong, and try and mobilize it for something like this. I think I'll jump over these ones. Maybe come back to them. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Geoff. So hopefully that was helpful to get you start thinking about innovation in a big sense, in the systemic sense. What can governments do? How can bigger institutions embed innovation in the way they work? I've actually realised that we haven't yet introduced Christian, who was here earlier on doing some judging for us. But Christian STENTA is from the Centre for the Australian Centre for Social Innovation, or TAXI, as it is more well known. Christian actually worked in homelessness before he went to TAXI. He's been with TAXI pretty much ever since he started. It started as an organisation, three years ago? And Christian is now the communications head of TAXI. So Christian's actually going to talk to you about bringing it down a level. So Geoff talked to you then about the system and embedding innovation at that level. Christian's going to bring it down to another level of the organisation. So what can organisations do to support innovation? And he'll provide you as well with some very practical examples of exactly how his organisation is supporting innovation. And he'll talk also about some of the methods that you've heard over the last few days and what they really look like in action. So bring yourselves back down to what we do every day, and welcome Christian to talk to you about those things.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's Geoff, an idea from our government in South Australia led to the creation of the Australian Centre for Social Innovation. We have a program there called Thinkers in Residence, where we bring experts out to sort of think about a whole range of different big social, political, environmental challenges that we face in South Australia. And some 4 years ago, Geoff came out and to talk about and to think about social innovation in South Australia. So our organisation in itself was once a very big idea, which has now sort of turned into a reality. So hopefully the presentation that I can talk you through today, looking at some of the work that we do at Taxi and how we approach social challenges, and talking about one specific example of a challenge that we've been working on for 12 months, can be a point of inspiration for you to think about how you might sort of work for the next 12 months on this issue of homelessness that you've been looking at and housing. So at Taxi, we often think about social innovation, and we think about, I guess, the challenges that we face in Australia and around the world as sort of looking for fertile ground and thinking about ways in which we can actually find the right conditions, the right kind of qualities, the right sorts of environments from which seeds we can sow seeds and seeds can grow. And so today I want to sort of talk about a specific example that we've been working on over the last 12 months within the ageing and caring space, and talk you through, I guess, some of the tools and some of the processes that we've undertaken to create better outcomes and improve outcomes for people like this. Over the last 12 months, we've connected with some 130 different people, talking with them about their experiences of late adulthood or sort of living in older life, late stages of life, and we spent some really significant time with about 40 people in particular, families, individuals. We've gone on holidays with them, we've gone shopping with them, we've eaten dinner with them, we've done all sorts of things to best understand what improving outcomes actually means. You know, how can we actually help people thrive in life? And in this particular instance, late stages of adulthood. But before we got to that point, we had to start with an urgent social challenge. For us, that's absolutely critical. Something, a really knotty kind of social problem, some kind of a social issue for us to kind of get our sort of heads around. You guys have been spending the last couple of days looking at homelessness and housing, which is a huge issue here in Hong Kong. We also think it's really critical to develop partnerships with people and to develop partnerships with the right kind of stakeholders who are ready to learn and to work differently. And that statement is really intentional and really, really critical, because social innovation does make you think about things differently. You need to be open to criticism. You need to be open to being told by people in the community that your ideas aren't going to work. You've got to be open to changing the way that you initially thought something might work and being able to roll with the punches in some way. So having the right stakeholders and establishing the right partnerships is really fundamental. And thirdly, seeking an opportunity to realign resources, that there actually needs to be a real solid commitment to be able to explore what's working and what's not working in terms of the existing systems. And that might mean commissioning new ways of doing things. It might mean decommissioning things that aren't working. So it's really having an open mind and ensuring that the fertile ground is really sort of moist enough. It's got the right kind of conditions and environment in place for the seeds that you sow to really grow. So within our ageing project, we started with an urgent social challenge, a rapidly ageing population, which isn't unique to Australia, it's something that we're facing all around the world. But just to give you a bit of context, in Australia, in 2007, we had a national census, like we do every few years, and approximately about 13% of our total population was aged 65 and above. The projection is that by 2056, that percentage will increase to somewhere between 23 and 25% of the total population of Australia. Now, the reason why that's quite a pressing and urgent social challenge is that that has implications for all aspects of the way we live our lives, from how our cities are designed, from where we live in Australia, because we live very much on the outer of our country with desert in the middle. Has huge implications for our economy, for jobs, for skill shortages, for our healthcare system, how we take care of people, where we take care of people, public transportation, government revenue. You know, population ageing is a really, really significant challenge for us. So in approaching this particular challenge, we were able to establish some really critical partnerships with some really, really intentional and well-placed sort of organisations and people. So firstly, the South Australian Government, through the Office for the Ageing, came on board as a key policy maker, as a group who actually establish sort of strategic social policy within this particular space. So that was really, really critical to ensure that the work that we were doing had the greatest opportunity to create systemic change within government. The cities of Salisbury and Unley were really critical partners to come on board as well, being local government authorities, because in Australia the local government authorities provide a significant amount of home and community-based care to people that are still living in the community and haven't gone into a residential nursing home or aged care facility. And thirdly, ACH Group and Helping Hand as two of the largest not-for-profits in the aged care sector in Australia, but also two of the largest NGOs who are incredibly innovative and invest quite a significant amount of money in research and development to progress their field as service providers in the community and of residential services. And thirdly, around the opportunity to realign resources, you've got to have the right environment to play in. You know, in Australia at the moment, the Australian government at a national level is looking at significant reform around the way that we provide services and the sorts of systems and policies that exist and enable that to occur, so the regulatory environment. But also, there's a significant amount of investment and funding that's going into this space at the moment for research and development. So we're working in a space where people are thinking about this kind of stuff. And so it's in some ways we're able to most effectively push for not just systemic change, but that there can actually be sort of money on the table to kind of prototype and realise this kind of stuff. So those sorts of environments and the partners and having the right kind of challenge and whatnot are really, really quite critical, but they just lay the foundations for an organisation like ours. We believe that you need more than that. You need the right kind of ingredients to be able to have a successful project, to successfully achieve some sort of really solid solutions towards social challenges. So we think it's really critical that you ask questions, that you offer opportunities, that you enable co-production, and that you can create models for scale. So asking the questions that have not yet been asked. So in our work around ageing, we realise that an ageing society isn't in itself a problem. It's a challenge, but a problem might be that there are groups of older people who are struggling to get the most from life, or that the system is struggling to efficiently respond to something. So through our work, through ethnographic mechanisms, by spending time with people, like the 40 people that we went on holidays with and we had dinner with and spent time in their homes, getting to know who they are, through our research, shadowing service providers, we were able to really refine the series of questions that enabled us to really focus into an opportunity area, an opportunity to actually improve some specific outcomes. So through that process, we really got down to the concept of wanting to focus on outcomes for people who are being cared for and for the people who are caring for people. That within the aged care system, there's a lot of service provision that's directed around health provision, that might be medical, that might be around sort of residential care and those sorts of things. But what about for families and people who are looking after older people in their own homes? And how do we design those sorts of services so that respite care can actually be something that's much more attractive and accessible for people, so that it's much more effective for carers and the people they care for? And how can we actually redefine that kind of care so that it's not just about relieving stress, but that it's actually about enabling people to develop sort of relationships, to actually have experiences as carers, and for the people that they care for, so that it's actually much more developmental. In terms of offering opportunities for solutions that sit both inside and outside of the system, through the work that we've done, we felt that it was absolutely critical that that we enabled 7 opportunities, or thought about 7 opportunities that would actually help transform the way that we conceptualise care. So we asked ourselves things like, how can we help people, shift their mindset so that it's not a barrier to great living? You know, when we ask people about what does great living look like, mindsets and the concept of not being able to do something was really quite significant for many people. How could we reduce the strain of caring relationships on family and friends? You know, that people were really feeling burdened and felt that it was wrong to feel burdened, and there was a lot of stress and pressure on the people that were caring for others. In other instances, we found that there were a lot of untapped and unactivated resources sitting at the periphery of people's lives. How could we actually activate some of those families and friends and networks that exist? How can we help people who are isolated form caring relationships with others? How can we enable people in caring situations to form relationships and networks with other people within their local community so that they themselves don't feel isolated? They're the sorts of opportunities that we grappled with. So we moved away from the idea that it was just about more efficiently providing ageing care services for people and started to think about the different range of opportunities that exist. And you guys have been doing that over the last couple of days. And I saw that in the pitch session earlier when the range of responses and opportunities that existed around housing and homelessness was actually very, very diverse, and it wasn't just focused around bricks and mortar and providing a physical house for someone. Thirdly, a really critical ingredient, which I know that you're all very aware of, is this concept of co-production. So how end users, how people that are actually affected by a particular situation, by a particular circumstance or context, are actually engaged in the production, the design, the prototyping of a particular solution. And we use the word co-production at Taxi to talk about solutions that both generate new resources, but that also shift outcomes for people. So co-produced solutions tap into and connect people's time, their skills, and their experiences in ways that create a new kind of value and different types of value for people, for communities, for systems, and for services. So I'd like to show you a really short video now of a co-production process that we use, particularly around co-designing with people, called Working Backwards. It's not focused around ageing. It's about it was developed or filmed during another piece of work that we did around children and families. But I think it really gives a great example of the kind of work that we do and the value of co-production.
No, not at all.
Far from it.
Okay. No, we would not volunteer for anything.
Ever.
Normally? Not at all.
No, we just don't get involved in things. We really don't. For some reason, we just choose not to get involved in a lot of different community type activities, because a lot of the time they're really, I don't know, they almost seem political, where it's about, you know, who runs it and you have to answer to this one and you have to do that and you're not allowed to say this, and they don't actually want any input. Like if you go get involved and you go, oh, I reckon that could be done better, they don't care what you think, they just want you to do what you're told. But with this, it was all about what we thought.
This started where families were at. It didn't actually go in with a determined solution and an established program saying, family, you have a particular problem, it needs to be fixed, and here we are as a professional with a solution for you. If we apply this solution, your problem will be fixed.
If policy is going to work, if it's going to be about enabling people to live different lives, then we've got to figure out what people actually need and want and prototype that stuff first before we put in place all of the structures and systems. In the look phase, we're trying to answer the question, what would be a great outcome for people? And to do that, we have to hang out with people, and that's what are known as ethnographic methods. That's trying to figure out what makes people tick, what motivates them, what excites them, what gets them up in the morning.
You're just being with that family and living a day as they live it, experiencing a day as they do, and understanding what the ups and downs look like.
Part of the learning for me, was to learn what an ethnography was and how I would apply that. It was quite a scary process, really, because that involved having to actually walk the client's journey, and this was a bit of a displacement of power, I guess.
One of the most important things that I've learnt from this project is the element of prototyping. And if I can explain it in my own words, I understand it as something where you can try and you test something with the people that you're working with, and you get to test it over again until something works.
There's paper prototyping, where you might create a storyboard and put that in front of somebody and ask them to imagine themselves in that situation. And then there's experienced prototyping, and experienced prototyping is where you really learn the most because you try out something like a mini version of something or a live version of something over a period of time. So in Family by Family, we hired new staff, we recruited families, we connected them up in link-ups, and those link-ups ran for around 12